It's where the Americans got basketball from, I'm assuming.
Oh,
It's the
really?
it's the British female version of basketball.
Oh my goodness. How cool is that?
But you
Good.
can't dribble. So it's a little bit different but similar.
Okay. Okay. Wow.
How
Well,
are you
man,
doing, Tom?
I am well, buddy. I've had a little bit of a I've had an up and a down week. My son graduated with his doctorate on Friday. So we
Yeah.
had a big gathering. He's my second child, my youngest son. And then my daughter was in town for that, and her fiance were look all day Sunday. We were looking for venues for her wedding next, which is a year from now. You already plan out in America a year from now in these special
Yeah.
venues. So I have been going hard, and then last few weeks I've been really feeling the emotion of this change, going from pastoring to this ministry, and
Mhm.
just really. Hey Beth, good morning.
Hi, Beth.
Yeah,
How you doing, girl?
yeah, good, thank you.
Good.
Ready.
Yeah, just feeling a little down and wanting to get locked into my next role, because the fullness group is good and growing, but it's too small to support me. So I'm looking for that bridge kind of role, and it hasn't come. And so that it's one of those times where that God has called you, you stepped out in faith, and then the thing that you hope hasn't come. You know what I mean? It's the in between.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at today. So
It's the exhorter gifts dream place to be in.
not for this exhorter.
No.
I wish
I'm saying it tongue in the cheek. That's
Exactly.
the pure exhorter, Tom. Yeah.
Exactly. I know. I am an exhorter, and I know I obeyed the Lord, guys. I know it. I mean, we have cool things that are unfolding and all. And I got a message yesterday from a guy who's on the global board of Youth for Christ. Have you ever heard of Youth for Christ?
Yes, I know them well. We've got friends in George that run a
Is that
ministry as well for them. Yeah.
Well, a friend in Ireland told them about me, and what he wants to talk to me about creating a global leadership academy for evangelists. That's pretty cool.
Interesting. I like all the global terminologies. It sounds massive. Hey? I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what that would mean other than an online platform, like this. But
yeah,
what's cool is during COVID, the Lord, he just kind of established my, this feels like normal breathing now,
Yeah.
So if I were to start an online class for evangelists around the world, an academy,
yeah,
I mean, it would be just like this, be
yeah.
in these rooms. So anyway,
Tom, I'm sorry, just something practical. I have to jump out here at 12:20, if that's okay. If you'll forgive me.
How far away is that?
No, it's say 10 minutes before you're going to stop.
Okay, good.
At the end, so 10 minutes early.
Yeah. Well, let's do that. That's no problem. Okay. And then Yapi had something come up real quickly. So guys, we're almost done. So you will no longer have this class in after 2 weeks after this, I think.
Yeah. This is session 11. Is it?
Is this 10?
Week 11. 10, it says week 11, the invitation said 11. Is it week 10 or week 11?
It's still 10. I think we missed a week and she sent out 11, but I think we still have 2 more.
Okay.
This is great. 10. And but I'd like to take just a brief pause. So we're going to talk about relational thriving today, but just ask you guys in your own personal walk after I pray, would you consider your thriving in your relationship? So I thought we'd start with that, and I'll kind of begin, but let's pray. Holy Spirit, I welcome you into this wonderful class, Lord, and the way that you have been with us and worked with us and helped each of these students to grow, expand, deepen, draw more from you, but also learn the skills to draw out the gold in others. And I just invite you into this morning's class, and all that you want to do, we give you free reign to move in our hearts and bring greater dimensions of thriving into our lives as a result of today's class. We are relational beings, and that's how you made us. So help us and guide us in Jesus' name. Amen. So I'll start. I was not raised in a family that was really in the being side. I was raised in a doing family, if that makes any sense. My dad was really a go-getter, and we were always measured on, how well we're doing academically, athletically. I don't know. My dad was just a hard charger. He had 4 sons. I was the third of 4 sons. And so I have this motor inside, but it took a real crash in my early 30s, which led to the whole book of Mining for Gold and Growing, to even understand about boundaries, about the being side of life, about tending to my inner, world and all that. So I've come a long way, and I will say I am relationally thriving at a new level since I stepped away from full-time pastoring. So I've been doing that for 25 years. And my family always shared me with this group and shared me with this group. And I would be always giving and always be in demand and always going to the hospital, or meeting with these people. And so I have been more attentive to my sons and my daughters and my wife at a level I don't remember if I've ever been this attentive, and it's wonderful. It's the in-between where I feel like, I want to go have a role, that doing part of Tom. I want to have a role, give me a role, go do things. But I would also say my conversations, my inner pace, my relationship with God and with them is at a high. It hasn't been, due to my capacity to be. So maybe just want each of you share, how do you think you're doing in your relationships with God and others? Anyone share? Who wants to go first?
I'll go. You can go, Carl. I feel for myself, I'm doing pretty well with relationships, so I feel really blessed. Moved up to a new area, living with 2 women who also work for the same company, it's charity, and just get on really well. And I think only yesterday things opened up a bit more, another level of
congratulations, by the way. You can actually have a little bit of normal life.
So it's been really important that those relationships have worked. And we actually moved up and there were 4 of us and it didn't work. Then a woman, she moved out and now it's working really well. And so, I think that was just, for her, that's never going to work, living with people. So what can you do? And so I feel like that's actually some really fruitful relationships. And I think I'm really blessed with that. And having a network here, it's when you move somewhere and I've got a ready-made network, which is so rare.
Wow.
I'm on a course with other people who live locally.
So it's like a DTS type of thing, but the people are there. The Christian believers are around you already.
So even in a lockdown life, in the office, and everyone that works in the office is a Christian, and so you hang out, and it's easier to make those bonds, I think. Feeling great about those things and fruitful and great.
Sure. How would you assess your relationship with Jesus today?
I think I probably I can easily recognize what he's been doing in my life, and I feel like last week he was reminding me of yet another lesson he's been teaching me, and can see his without any giving any too much detail.
Yeah,
I basically,
I'm not talking about the
Yeah,
details. How
I
is it
basically-
overall?
yeah, I didn't get the job that I wanted and I'd applied for a long time, etc. But I felt his hand in that. And so feeling really grateful for the Lord and seeing his hand, to process that disappointment with him more and like go to him more quickly.
Got it.
There we go.
Good. Yeah. And Carl, how about how would you assess your relationships with both God and with the most people closest to you?
If I look at Holy Spirit, Jesus, and God, I think something that's come up is that I need to grow in my relationship with the Father. So that's been a process for me. I would be comfortable in my relationship with Jesus, and both the Holy Spirit feel that we are quite intimate, but realizing that there's certain things that are elements that I'm missing maybe with the Father. So
Your distinction, that you could see that difference. Wow, that's good.
that's a very specific thing God is busy doing with me. Okay, so that's the one thing. And then with, say, on a family level, I feel like my goal is always, I don't want my kids to come across as being starved of their daddy, being in ministry as well. So I feel like by the grace of the Lord, there's a good balance. In having little kids, it is crazy at times, but having lots of time for intimacy with each of my children and with my wife. So there's really, I've really been working on boundaries. So I'm eating the fruit. I'm eating the fruit of that now. Then I think the big challenge with wider, you ask intimate relationship, the big challenge with that is I would be an evangelist and an includer. So if I could, everybody would be with me every day, everywhere I go, potentially. So I really had to work on defining different relationships.
Yeah.
And I feel like for the first time in my life, I'm in a place where I'm really having a taste of what a covenant friendships and covenant relationships look like.
Wow.
So yeah, so also in that area would be good. So yeah.
Wow. So good. Thanks for being so detailed. Yeah, so this whole dimension of life and this chapter of the book, I was trying to decide when I'd written the book, I had two different ideas to include as the last chapter. And I ended up with this one for the purpose of anchoring that thriving is not only about accomplishing goals or success on an external level. There is a dimension of thriving that is completely rooted in love God and love others, that you love yourself. And that's not always been the strength for me, to be honest. I think I would hide behind a lot of activity at times, if you understand what that means, in ministry. And it took in my 30s and my 40s and continuing to today to slow my inner motor down and to measure, if you can say measure, the quality of my primary relationships. And that you can't all relationship, all thriving is got to be rooted in how your relationships are doing. So I want to kind of bridge that off from there. I didn't grow up in a family that talked about boundaries, my dad pretty much was a pretty broken guy, but lived in a workaholic type of lifestyle. He just never stopped, never slowed down. And whenever he did slow down, a lot of conflict would rise up because he didn't want to deal with tensions. He didn't want to deal with frustration. He didn't want to deal with anybody's disappointment. He was just going to accomplish. So I want to talk today about when not only yours, but when you're working with a leader, to have a lens to assess, not to control them, just same tools of drawing out, to ask them and to assess how are they doing relationally with Jesus and with others. And it really is the heartbeat of all, right? I mean, it's our identity. This is a being class. Some of our classes are doing, design, goals, accomplishment. This again comes back to the being side. And then assessing what's the fruit of your relationships. And if you come up with a place that says, let's say, use Beth's example, there was a season, I guess, where with the fourth young lady, the relationships were not working. Could we say that, Beth?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know when they're not working, and you have to reach some level of equilibrium or thriving, or life is awful. So but if you're in a marriage, a long-term relationship, and those relational issues are never dealt with, it either leads to a numbness or things like divorce or affairs or all manner of or even some people, they just internalize it and they get sick. So what we're talking about today is so foundational, but it's the end of the course. And I see it as sort of, I always see this chapter and this part of Mining for Gold as wrapping up the rest, right? Because if you're going to do well at anything, you need to be great at relationships and emotional intelligence. So that's what today's about. So when I do coaching, and and I interestingly today I'm having my first South African coaching client. How about that? That's pretty cool. But I work people through 4 phases. Where are you, and what's going on in your life? Where do you think you are to where you want to be? Then we talk about their design, which I've done with you guys. And I did talk to Mary. Mary's going to schedule you guys for a final session with me, just so I can help you and serve you on where you want to get to next. But then we talk about sweet spot. Who are you? Where would you thrive from in your design? And we start talking about lining up roles and time and your schedule and diary and roles, all kinds of things where you're catching that grace of God on how he made you. And then the last one is always about relationships, but not just relationships in the sense of, is everything happy and peaceful? That is good, but how much of God's energy is flowing through you, and how much of your relationships are in your own energy? And the last part of it is flourishing is always about helping someone else, turning to another person and serving and walking with them and being an asset to them thriving. So I consider you're not really flourishing unless you're helping another person, even if it's only another person move into greater levels of thriving. So that's the system. That's what we're going to talk about today. And today we're clearly over on the identity side, the being. If I were to put being, I put being over here on identity, and I put doing on design. So basically, if you cut out the relational side, you've cut off half of your whole thriving equation. So if relationships aren't on your radar, and you're always praying, Lord, measuring sounds bad, but your assessing is better. How's my relationship with Jesus? And I love what you said, Carl. I love, because I've had that. I've had a comfort level with the Spirit, a comfort level with Jesus, and had a broken relationship with my Father. So the way that you identify that is really beautiful, really self-aware. But we're going to talk about identity again, Dave, but in the part of how are those relationships. So what have we done? We believe it or not, we're at the final principle from the book. We began with God does the work. 2, identity is your foundation. It's the whole platform from which thriving comes. Your design is where you will feel the most fulfilled and alive when you are being you, which is your design and how he made you. Then when you begin to discover within all the designs, you have your unique one, and there's a grace on that, and you begin to experience Christ's life coming through your sweet spot. There's wind and momentum. And last week we talked about the cross and how death is a part of resurrection, and how Jesus and God uses death and burial and resurrection, the gospel, to transform us. Well, today, I want to talk about your community and those around you. I would say people like if your married spouse, if not friends of same gender, friends of other genders. If you're married, that's more of a distant relationship, but your spouse, your children, your parents, your siblings, maybe you may not have great relations with them. What about the team members that you work with? And how are those going? They're never perfect, and that's not the goal. The question is Jesus alive in them, and you're growing and loving well. The assessment measurement, if you can do it, for thriving is, are you loving well? Are you receiving love from God well? And are you giving it away? So I'm just going to kind of develop this, and we can stop and share along the way. So if you think of, you're going down a grape vine, and there are literally, I have one in my backyard back here, but if you've been to a vineyard, there are bunches of grapes that are supposed to be full and healthy like this one. Then there may be some that are shriveled up, look more like raisins, or there's half of the bunch on there. There are bunches of grapes that are thick and full. This is like a full one. Then there's little ones that are smaller and weaker. And as you look at your relationships, I just want to kind of go take a deep dive now. What's the quality of your marriage? What's the quality of you with your personal best friendships? What is the depth of those relationships? Beginning with Jesus, how connected are you with him by the Spirit? And do you go in long sections? I used to do this early on before I started looking at my inner life. I'd be so busy doing the work of the ministry, I forgot the Lord of the ministry. That might not be y'all's issue, but that was mine. Then in the key relationships, like for me, I've had a renaissance with my children. They, all their lives, they've been pastors' kids. All their lives, I've been very public, very, very out front, very, people always around me when I was in the public settings. And there were times where they just got I hate to say this, they got scraps, right? They got the little bit left over. But today they're getting full attention, and I love it. We're getting ready to go to the beach tomorrow for 4 days. And my kids just kept saying, Dad, we're so excited just to spend this time with you and Mom, where I'm, undistracted. But that's what I'm after today. How would you assess them? And then how would you say, I would say it this way: what do you think God is doing in that house you live in, Beth? What's the Spirit after? What's he trying to create there? What atmosphere? What would be growth or development or blessing or thriving in that, or at your work, Carl, or in your home? So keeping love primary is what this last principle is all about. The Bible says, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. That is the first and the greatest commandment, and the second as well. And all of the law and the prophets flow off of this. So here it is. There was one of them, a lawyer, Matthew 22, testing Jesus, asked him a question, said, Teacher, which is the great commandment of the law? And Jesus said, this comes from the Shema in Deuteronomy chapter 6. And he said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. So let's stop right there. Is your relationship with God one that has your whole heart? It says all your heart. Is your relationship with God one that has your whole soul? Your soul is your mind, your will, and your emotions. I mean, how do you love God well with your emotions? How do you love him with your will? That comes with surrender. How do you love him with your mind? Your thought life is governed and guided by truth, and you're not letting impure or maybe trashy or ungodly thinking dwell up in your brain. And your emotional life, is your emotional life just all over the map, or is it your emotions are engaged in your learning through them with God, and then with your mind? So Jesus said, this is the first, and the second one is like this: that from that source, your neighbor, which could be somebody close to you, like a spouse or family, but it's people outside of you. It goes from him to outward, and then on to neighbors that are true, more distant and and people that you're just meeting, or neighbors that live nearby, or whatever, just other people in your community. And what does this mean, this last one? Theologically, agape, selfless, unconditional, grace-filled love is like it's like the branch of the biblical tree. It's like the base, the main trunk. That is, the main trunk of biblical theology is love. That's what he says. These commandments, all the law, which is the Torah in the Old Testament, and maybe Jesus's Sermon on the Mount, all of Scripture hang on, and all the prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, all of those old and minor and major prophets, all of them hang on this concept of agape and love. It's powerful biblical theology, this concept. And so how's it land? So here's what I want to talk about today. When a leader that you're working with, and you can sense they're running on fumes internally, they have no sap, if you will, they have no God energy flowing in them, that's not thriving, right? It's not thriving. So Jesus said, if you abide or remain, meaning that you're connected into the vine, I'm the vine, you're the branches. If you remain in him, abide, and I in you, he's saying the command, remain in me, abide in me. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides or remains in the vine, you can't bear fruit alone. We might pass over that and go, well, that's, of course, you're disconnected. But how much let me just think about this. How much ministry is done out of fleshly energy? Yeah, I know I've done it. I mean, I've done that. But how much? How much is done out of the self-life? How much is done out of relationship with Jesus? I'm the vine, you're the branches. If you abide in me and I in him, you'll bear much fruit. Without me, you can do nothing. So that's this beautiful, beautiful picture. Now I want to focusing on one thing. Most people look at life through the lens of fruit, don't we? How is the ministry? How are my finances? Am I getting the job that I fall into this? How many people got saved? How many, how much? What can we measure in terms of production? And all that's good, and we should measure things. It's important to measure things. But when it comes to thriving, and fruit alone is not enough, and focusing on how well our ministry is going, or how big it's getting, or how
Did we lose him there, Beth? I'm here.
Oh, I can hear you again. Maybe it's come back.
I can't hear Tom. I can hear you.
Oh, weird. Yeah, I thought you'd lost me, but I think we've lost Tom.
We've lost Tom Camacho.
Oh no.
I lost you. Like the whole world stopped for a second. Did you
Okay.
hear?
Yeah, no, we lost you there, Tom, halfway through your story.
Okay, let me tell you my story. Sorry, dudes. That's crazy.
No.
I'm glad I got you back.
Okay, that was weird. Like that was Twilight Zone. So did I show you this one? So this
Yes.
right here, this big dark stalk on the right is what's considered the vine. And every year you prune a grapevine, you prune these branches down just to the vine. So right now it's May. These new stalks are coming. No grapes until August or July. They'll come in late June, and the bunches will be fully mature in August. But I want to talk about this juncture. Instead of measuring how this is coming out here, if you don't have this, you don't have that. If you're not deeply connected and remaining, Jesus said, connected to the vine, it's impossible. It can't happen. But what if we measured our connection with Jesus. So Carl, your mention was, I'm growing in relation to Father. When you think of leaders around you or people that you've worked with this course, have you ever had conversations about how they're doing with God? Share with me that. Does any of your questions go around their relationship with the Father? I'd like to hear. Have you done that?
I think my first thought, we have a saying always, if the root is right, the fruit will be right. So similar to what you're saying here. And I think oftentimes you can see someone operating and it's almost like a bit of muscle memory, you know.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it's like, we know how this is done. We're just going through the motions, but you can see they lack the joy.
Yeah.
So asking the questions, listen, I know you've heard, for example, I'd ask a question like this. How current is this revelation?
Current.
Is it current? Is it fresh bread? Is it fresh bread?
That's a good word. Yeah.
Because fresh bread will draw people with the aroma. Everybody wants that.
Yeah.
No one wants stale bread. So
good word.
how fresh is this that you're presenting to others, you know? You also heard the analogy about the cup. If your cup is overflowing and all those types of things, like if you're not spending time with the Lord, making sure that it's current and fresh, what are you presenting to others?
Exactly.
So where are you drawing your strength from?
And as you work with leaders, is that a part of the conversation that you have?
Sorry, me.
I'm thinking about a specific person that I had a conversation with. Oh, sorry, you asked Beth. Sorry, Tom. This thing.
No, I'm asking you, is in your ministry and your work with leaders, how are they relating with God a part of those relationships, this conversation? Yeah, I'm asking you that, Carl. Is that, I mean, you have those conversations regularly?
Yes.
Okay. And Beth, how would you say, when you're working with leaders, is that a normal part of conversation? Is where are they in their intimate place with Christ?
I think it would be good to ask that more. I think we probably think about the specific conversations, talk more about specific situations. You know, how is the Lord in this situation? What's he teaching you in this, situation?
Good point.
And I like this, the idea of how, like a health check, almost like how is like your spiritual health and connection with the Lord. I imagine from there that a lot of other things would just naturally come out of that.
They do.
And so, yeah, I think it's a great, think about people that I meet with and thinking, this would be great for them to talk about.
Yeah, and so basically what I'm saying today is take the principles of deep listening, asking questions, cooperating with the Holy Spirit, and then looking at action steps. There are many times, I don't want to give a number, but many times when a person is having an issue in life, you can trace it back to they've lost touch with God. Literally, that it can become that simple. Not everything's that simple, but that, what's really so frustrating is I haven't had any time to hear the Father's voice. It comes up all the time. Or busy leaders, I would say things like, when's the last time you just took a day to either fast or just be still? And much of my mentoring and leadership coaching has helped people make rhythmic, I'd say, away times. Do you all do that? And I've had to learn to do this. Do you have on your diary, on your calendar, planned times away where you're with Christ? It sounds so simple, like we should all do it, but how many of us do that? And it's become a real joyful but intentional discipline for me, and I know, and I have to keep it on the front burner of my diary
No.
and of my calendar. I'm going to spend this day with no other activities except to sit. Sometimes it's at a retreat center. Sometimes it's at the beach or away in a cabin somewhere, and not to write anything or not to produce anything, just to sit. And that's a critical, and so just trying to put flesh on what I'm talking about when I'm working with leaders. So I like to think of it as a breathing. I like to think of thriving as a breathing, you know. What if you breathed out continuously and you never had that thing? It sounds silly, but many people are spiritually asthmatic. I'm going to never use it, that term, but they're not, their lungs aren't taking in deep breaths of the Holy Spirit. And we generally can't do that at a frenetic pace, can we? So that's why Jesus said, you know, that's why the psalmists or spiritual directors would say, you know, I know for me it is, but anyway, meet him in the morning when it's still, before you start exhaling energy and giving and sowing, but rhythmically breathing. And how are your lungs? How are your spiritual lungs? Thriving living comes from spiritually good breathing, in and out, in and out, in and out. You might find yourself at times, and you can just, when you stop from the activity, you can feel you're out. How many of you ever felt like you're out of balance? How many of you felt that, like, I'm out of balance, I'm way over here, I'm doing, and God, yeah, me too, but God's saying, okay, all right, reestablish, come back, get this rhythm. So maybe we could each share. I'm going to just share what goes for me. Is I'm a morning person. I don't know what people do who aren't morning people. So maybe you guys are night people, but I love early. I love when there's no words, no people to talk to other than Jesus. I even like when it's dark and the sun's still coming up. And it's when I do my breathing in. And I just read my journal, and I get the word out, and I let the scriptures. I love going to the Psalms and the Proverbs and the Sermon on the Mount. And then sometimes I'm reading chapters of the Bible, but I do that in the morning times, and I can feel my tank as I do that rise. And then I meet the day with some kind of resource. What is, maybe go through, Beth, what's a rhythm for you for connecting with God? Or what's yours?
I think so I think I do a lot, and it's not a specific time every day, but I listen to the Bible a lot. So
Okay.
especially because I always find that when I'm like walking or doing some washing up, or, you know, for me, that is really like, it's just almost like by doing something manual, it like frees up my mind to like think about. Yeah, that's a really regular thing that I really enjoy. I find that really.
I've heard people, podcasts have become a place. I don't know if that works for you, but some people say they listen to podcasts.
So yeah, I listen to a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so yours is maybe when your hands are busy, your mind can just dwell on the Lord, or whenever He's teaching you.
Yeah.
Carl, what would be a rhythm for you spiritually?
It's changed often, Tom. At the minute, like I said to you, with little kids in the house, morning time for me is chaos. So I can't plan for 4 o'clock in the morning, because I'm usually already awake with 3 boys at 4 o'clock in the morning, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, whatever. So what I would do is, usually I'll schedule my meetings in the daytime for after 9, and then I'll go drop my eldest son at school, and so then I have about 45 minutes to an hour there for myself in the mornings. Nice. So I would sit in a coffee shop. I never thought that I'd be able to do it, but I can drown out all the noise and just sit with the Lord and read my scripture or whatever I'm busy with, a bit of reading time and thinking about the day and so on. And then what I find as well a lot when I'm driving alone in the car, it's my time it's my time in prayer with the Holy Spirit. So I'm trying to be in constant prayer when I'm driving. So and then in the evenings now, when it's quiet, when my boys are in bed, is when I just sit with God the Father and just listen. Because a lot of this stuff is input and scriptures and teachings and things, and I found that I need to listen a little bit. So I'm just sitting and listening to his heartbeat.
What a great distinction. Sometimes there's all these resources, and sometimes it's not any resources, isn't it? What a great, differentiation, that sometimes it's just listening to the Father with no materials, no music, right? Maybe just listening for his voice. That's powerful. Yeah. And if you were to work with a leader, what would be some questions around abiding? What question, if I was the busy leader and you could see that I was thin or dry or so much, too much Tom, too much self, what questions would you ask to help me start looking at abiding? Can you think of any?
Maybe, what does rest look like?
What does rest look like? Okay. Wow. Rest. I don't even know what that means. Good. Let's do a few questions. What would be another abiding, mining for gold question?
What is the Lord speaking to you?
That's a good one, because it points me to go, oh, wow, I haven't even sat to listen. What is he speaking to you is a great question. How has the Lord been working in your life this week? It's another way to just say that same thing. What else?
Maybe it's a bit much, but like, when was the last time that you spent time just like listening to the Lord and praying?
Nice. When was the last time? Yes. Yeah, that's real specific. When was the last time? Yeah. And that would really reveal, well, I don't really sit at all. I never sit or whatever. When's the last time you just spent time intentionally with him? Good. One huge one that I've done that kind of blows people's minds. I say, how is your soul? And a lot of people don't even know what to do. Like, what? Soul?
Right. Good.
Like, how is your soul? Like, how watered is your inner life? Like, does it feel like a garden? Does it feel like a desert? Does it feel like machinery and gears? How's your soul, your inner being? What do you think of that one? That's pretty crazy. I mean, I don't know if we don't normally ask each other that. But how's your soul? Any others you can think of before I go to the next point?
I really like the idea of the watering. I think that's so visual. The idea of like watering your inner life. I think that's really cool.
It is. I'm going to show you a slide on that, but that's a very, very, like how, this is maybe, I don't know, it's pretty intimate, but some people use the term spiritual direction, spiritual director, spiritual formation people use the term, how's the garden of your heart? A garden's not going to do anything without water. And are things growing? Is anything blooming? Is it really full of weeds? You see what I'm saying? There's another analogy. I mean, there's 20, but abiding, garden, water, all that. Any other thoughts on questions before I go on?
I've got a little testimony for you, Tom.
Yeah, go, sure.
I had a couple over at my house for lunch on Sunday. They serve in the Victory Weekend ministry that we run. And they were sharing, I Tom Camacho'd them a little bit. So they were,
it's a verb.
They were saying they had some issue. Okay. So I thought, okay. So I said, what do you think the Holy Spirit is doing?
Nice. I love that question. My favorite question.
So the guy, you could see he's like, okay, he's he wants to release us into a new thing. And he was like, you could see he's giving you this massive answer, this massive spiritual answer. So I said, okay, that's great. That's great. So how can you align with him?
Wow.
So basically what you've explained to us, but I could see that he's never thought of that concept.
Of aligning?
Aligning, because that means just taking a small practical next step. And he felt so overwhelmed with this massive vision that he's got.
Yes.
He doesn't know. So ultimately, after hammering at him a few times with this, he said, these were his words, he said, I need to spend more time with God.
I mean, that is
Bang.
That is the example of what I would talk about today.
So I said, okay, well, practically, what is that going to look like? Because you have to put something in place. So he wants to talk more. So I should say, leave me and go sit with God.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
What I do in those terms is I try to ask them when, what day, what time,
what moment, what does it look like?
What does it look like? Put the feet on it, put the practical. And then another next follow-on question is, who can help you to hold you accountable that become rhythmic? And I usually don't make it me. Who in your life, or what way, or what pattern, what can you do that it's not just a one-off? Great work, Carl. Man, you got this. You're born for this.
It's the Lord.
Beautiful, beautiful, awesome, great testimony. That's exactly what it is. And generally, when you ask some of these questions, what the Holy Spirit, a lot of times it'll come back to, I just really need to sit with the Lord and hear him. So the whole sense of being and doing, I would say it this way, the two wings of thriving, but it's the breathing in and it's the breathing out. And when you only evaluate your doing side, it's not the whole you. Part of you is not always going. Part of you needs to just be, to relate, to take in, to rest. I love that question. What does rest look like? Because what we're talking about is Sabbathing and a time when life's not hectic, life's not pushing. You can't run an engine at 5,000 RPMs or 6,000 RPMs. It could take that for a few moments and then it needs to back off, or it'll burn the engine out. And we've done that. I know I've done that in my soul. And when I was very unhealthy in my 20s and 30s, I would just crash because I didn't know these principles at all. But now as I age, and then what I'm saying is, when you're working with leaders and say they really want to work on design, and they really want to work on, well, this is it's my strengths, and here's my roles, and all that alignment. But if it doesn't come back to the part of you that isn't doing, you'll find that divine energy doesn't flow out of just knowing your design. There has to be this intake of Christ's life, and that's a being question. So how's the current state of your being? That might be a little bit hard to understand for some people, but it's another way of looking at it. So anyway, we've come up with our own, but here's some if you want to take a picture of it or whatever, but here's some ones you could use. What's the current state of your soul, or how is your soul? What's the current state? How's it doing? What are you experiencing right now in your relationship with God? What are you experiencing? And break it down. Well, I feel like, that God's over there and he knows me and we talk occasionally. But now let's get more specific. What patterns of relational health or lack of health do you see in your relationships right now? What could come out of that question? Let's just stop. I don't want to, because this is I don't want to rush today's class. What patterns of relational health or lack of health could there be in our lives? Let's just throw some out. What's a bad pattern?
It could be trying, feeling yourself slipping into trying to fix people.
Fix people, which is control. That's right.
Yeah.
Fix people is control or codependency. What's another bad pattern in relational health?
I had a conversation with one of the people that I'm doing this with this week, and it's interesting. Something the Lord revealed to her was that there's patterns where in relationships she serves people, and then she believes that that is like cash in the bank. One day she can bank on it, and then she experiences disappointment.
Look at
And
that.
then she cuts the people. She cuts them.
Look
No
at
more
that.
of you let me down. So Lord the Holy Spirit showed that to her in a morning session last week.
That's huge, and that's a boundary issue because she's allowing all that, and she's really deep to that. But yet
then there's no lasting relationships.
Right.
There's no depth because she keeps cutting. She's like, you've wronged me, I cut you.
Pattern, and she could probably trace it again and again and again, and that must change. Great example. How about denial? Oh, there's no problem. The people are screaming around, something's got to change. No, there's no issue. Can they recognize denial? What's a pattern of relational health of good things?
Like vulnerability and honesty.
There you go. Transparency is a pattern, or we could just say living in truth.
Intimacy.
Intimacy. Andy Stanley, great book he wrote on, I forget the name of it, 5 questions and 5 answers. I could show it to you, but his latest book, one of them is, what's my relationship with truth? Can I listen to something that makes me feel bad about myself and hang in the conversation and bring it to Jesus? Man, that's maturity. Can I hear someone say something negative and I don't attack myself, attack them? You know what another bad relational pattern is? Blame. It was them. That's what she's doing. It's them. I'm cutting you out. Well, it's actually you. But just how do you deal with truth? We could go on and on. Any others you can think of? This one right here has got so many angles.
It can be more like enabling bad behavior, or it's also a boundary issue, or like lying, if you want to go like more
not telling the truth, lying,
difficult,
hiding, like Beth said, transparency. Another would be more of a hiding or isolation. There you go. Not living in the openness.
Superficial. Lots of people, but lacks depth.
Like holding loads of offense and
offense. I was going to say that was one of my key ones. What is your pattern of forgiveness or resentment? Or you could just put the term judging. But do you walk in more of a general sense of mercy and forgiveness, or one in judging? And it could be both ways. You judge yourself harshly and let everyone else off and don't. Or you could let yourself off and judge everyone else. Or you could do both. You could judge yourself harshly and there's no mercy anywhere. Look at that. Wow, isn't there a lot on that question? Any others? I just think it's a great exploration. Okay.
I suppose, so thinking of bad ones is everyone like a lack of trust, everyone having to like prove themselves trustworthy.
Interesting. Where does that come from? So much don't trust. You set these high safety walls around you that people have to just do these incredible things to win trust. And some people have been hurt so badly, that's their dynamic. But over time, that's a bit of self-protection, isn't it? I don't trust. And it becomes and then they feel isolated and all the things that come from that. So the whole world of emotional health is fascinating to me. I don't know about you, but to a leader, we have a whole section in our coach training that we do on emotional health. It's fascinating. So let's move on. What would it look like for you to rest? Or Carl said, what does rest look like? But this is more specific. What would it look like for you to rest more in grace? The subject of grace, forgiveness, mercy. It's not up to you. It's Christ in us, the hope of glory. It's his power in my weakness, the whole concept of grace. I use oftentimes, do you feel like you're sailing or do you feel like you're rowing? For some people, that's just easy brain language, like, oh my gosh, I'm rowing, or I catch moments of sailing. And then what does that mean? And it gives us, all of these are, they're tools, they're mining for gold tools. And this one tends to, like Carl said, what's the Holy Spirit's been speaking and saying? That's a killer question, because you can't avoid it. You can lie and make it up, but it's those
checkmate question. That one.
Yeah, it's just a checkmate question. Like, you can't hide for that.
Nailed it. There you go.
Nail them, because then you're like, it's the vulnerable questions. Well, he's been saying, I've been sensing him saying, I have to look at this pattern of serving and blaming in the sense of this lady, and here's a tip, just a tip in mentoring. When you come to something and you see, or they see something, the Lord has been working in that part of their garden. You're not discovering something that is often, it's not completely new to them. You're just helping them come up, helping them come back to what, see, God's already been working, right? He loves them. He wants them. So we're not trying to dig up anything. If anything, we're just trying to help them get transparent with God, who's already been speaking that pattern. Now, there are times when it's completely an aha revelation, and that's amazing times. But that's not usually the case. It's usually, yeah, he's been really, right? So, and then the mining for gold question is, now how can you cooperate with what you're hearing? When we come back up to the patterns of relational help, I'll give you another tool. If someone says, well, I tend to blame. When I feel cornered, I'll attack and I'll just make it about them. Take them to the Holy Spirit and say, how would God, what would God be wanting to maybe release in place of fill in the blank? That's the question I use. So what do you think the Lord might be wanting to give you instead of? And they go, I'm just trying to give you tools. Well, maybe to accept responsibility. And how can you cooperate with that, Tom? Maybe pause in my reaction time and go, what am I contributing to this? And on it goes. But don't leave it when you deal with mining for gold, don't leave it in the ethereal realm. How are you, Tom, gonna face, what's your next step in facing your pattern of relational blame? Man, you can't escape that. That's like being nailed to the wall. Like, you can't run, you can't hide. Like, oh, you can't. If you do this well, you're not controlling them. You're just bringing it. I love that part. Okay. Well, I found this is one of the most powerful slides of this section. Okay, so you can use this in whatever way you want. Here's another one. You could take a photo of it, but this has helped scores of people, and I call it the OASIS principle. Now, this actually came to me. I was at a youth conference speaking, and I was very busy. I was the national director of leadership coaching. I had a thriving church that was growing. I also had kids in high school, 2 in college. But my life was not in a healthy balance. It was not. This was about, this was 2016. So what's that, 5 years ago? My life had exploded in opportunity, blessing, speaking engagements, writing a book. I was starting to have the conversation to write about mining for gold. It was ridiculous, but I was not stewarding my boundaries well. And I was at this youth conference. I literally this college level girl came up to me and she goes, "I have a word for you." I'm like, "Okay." And she said this to me. She said, "I see you at an oasis and you're more focused on everyone else getting water, but you're terribly, almost critically thirsty. And the Lord wants to release his water to you." And man, I just literally, tears started coming to my eyes. And she just read my mail. And I was like, just sat there. And I'm like, you just described my life. And then she just brought some of her friends, guys and girls, all these college students, said, we just really love your heart. Could we just pray for you? And as they prayed for me, I just saw myself just sit down at the oasis and quit worrying about, I am a person that wants everyone to get water, but I had been neglecting my own water. And I literally remember that day. And I started to change my patterns then. And I also made different decisions since then to lay things down, like the national leadership role for a whole denomination across the United States, because it was draining me and I felt like it was no longer my assignment. So I could make room for more. So here's the Oasis principle. The primary thing to do when you're in a desert where there's water is to drink yourself. The danger in life is to focus so much on helping other people, you don't drink, and therefore you have no abundance or no overflow. It's the same principle as a vine and a branch, but it's another imagery, and it was personal to me. But here's the point of this one. You can't drink for me. Your spouse can't drink for me. Your mom can't drink for you. Your best friend can't drink for you. You alone can drink of Christ in the intimate space. And your diary's yours, your schedule's yours. No one, you can't blame someone. Now, in the case of Carl, when you have young children, I've had moms say to me who are on a church plant and they have 3 little kids and it's hard and there's so much output. They're like, I steal 45 minutes when my kids are napping. That's the one time of the day that I could sit and I want to just fold laundry or collapse. And they began to invest that time in Christ time, Jesus time, and just monitor their own drinking. So any thoughts on this principle? I love, for me personally, I don't know how it registers with you. This one really gives me, it grounds me, I'd say. Any thoughts on this principle? Anything?
I just feel like it's so normal almost, and not that that's a good thing. Normal in a bad way.
Normal how?
That people, we get so caught up with serving and providing. Right.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. And I thought that story is really beautiful. The whole, like, I can really picture it, you being led to the water, and I think, yeah, we just forget so quickly.
And you would look at my life at that time. On the surface and from a fruit standpoint, was ridiculous, the amount of favor and open doors and blessing. It was, but what I'm trying to say is that's not all to measure. Those, you could have all of that external and your inner life is drying up, because a lot of that fruit came from a season of healing and reconnecting with Jesus and finding boundaries and discovering my identity and my design. And then wind happened, fruit happened, multiplication happened. Listen to what I'm saying here. But then that can take over and then you're dry. That's where I was. I was all this external. But if you pull me out of the vine, I'm going to just dry. You can't bear any fruit. And I started to experience actually some of that. I needed to get regrounded again. I needed to refine rhythm. So when a major part of today, and this principle is rhythms. What are your rhythms? I ask this all the time. In fact, I think in terms of leadership rhythms. If I were to do a global evangelistic youth for Christ academy, I would say, what are your rhythms? Why is that important, guys? Why do rhythms matter in a leader's life? Answer that for me. Why does rhythm matter?
It's about continuity. Is it sustainable?
It's not sustainable unless it's rhythmic. Your heart beats, boom, boom, boom. The seasons of life are rhythmic. They happen. Leaders without rhythms are out of control. What else? What else about rhythms matter?
Momentum builds up so that even when there's pressing against, they're much more likely to still happen.
Good. A momentum builds up. And guess what? It happens in the opposite direction. A lack of rhythm can lead to an increasing sense of chaos and out of control. So when you're working with leaders, and I know we only got about 15 minutes or less than that with Carl, we'll end at 20 after. I'll end on time. But that there's a sense of when you don't press it to rhythms, it's not it's out of control. It's neglected when it isn't rhythmic. So when I have leaders talk about, I'm going to go, let's say they're parched like I was, and I needed to not just drink. I needed to create rhythmic drinking. Are you following me? I didn't need to just drink. I needed to create rhythms where I'm drinking regularly
Almost to be revived. It's when you've got dehydration, you can't just take one sip of water.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so that has been the past 5 years is living from a sustainable overflow, and it's brought major change for me, but overall healthier sense of thriving in the seasons. Anyway, I hope that's a helpful. So let's finish up here. So, do you guys use the term spiritual directors? Is that something you hear in your worlds for spiritual formation? Are y'all using those terms?
A bit, yeah.
It may be new for some of you, but in the UK, in the Vineyard movement, especially, we have people that don't just talk about thriving, in your goals and roles and functions, but they actually really focus upon your God relationship and how are you growing spiritually. This is where one of these types of leaders, like some people enlist a spiritual director like they would a coach, but it's not about their doing, it's about how they're doing in their relationship with God. And so it's a spiritual director is what they call it. And they're a healthy resource for people that want to grow in abiding. But remember, the goal is for the leader to learn to steward themselves. So if you always have to have a spiritual director and you never stop, there's something missing. You need them at maybe like an occasional booster shot or to guide you and to help you to lead you into new levels. But no one can drink that cup themselves. They have to create their own rhythms, their own abiding. Okay, lastly, I love this little picture of this little, I don't know what it is, orangutan or something. But think of a child, think of a baby, think of a toddler. They don't know any of the stuff we know. And I find flourishing leaders are always giving away to others. I don't think flourishing leaders just flourish to themselves. I don't even believe that's a biblical picture of flourishing. Jesus said, give, and it'll be given to you. Good measure, pressed down. If you want an abundance, give away. If you want more, sow it. This is a principle of the kingdom. And the final step of anyone flourishing is to have a relationship with someone not where you are. And I love this about Mining for Gold because it makes it multiplication. Who can you help? Who around you desires more? And how could you walk with them? What could you do to serve them? How can you give away what you've learned about flourishing? I use this as my model, and you've seen it 100 times now, probably in this class. But this is this arrow onto the side. So you're coming into more. You know your identity. You're God's refining you. You're setting your boundaries. You're coming into a level of fruitfulness and joy and peace and life that you cannot neglect another person or a young leader. And I find when a leader's thriving, there's no shortage of people that want to get to know them. Usually it's just the life of Christ. They're drawn to the life of Christ. Mining for gold is a way that this becomes a cycle. It's a way that it becomes here's a word, a lifestyle, right? Thriving and helping others thrive. What are your thoughts on that? We're about to wrap up. What are your thoughts on the lifestyle of helping others flourish?
Yeah, I think it's that thing of when you've experienced something good yourself, it's only natural to want other people to experience that same freedom. And yeah, seems really natural.
It is natural if you let your mind go there. Like I become, Gandalf or a place of source of wisdom, just a resource for others. And this happened to me anyway, but and it still happens. I still get emails, phone calls, and we haven't seen any. We've been just beginning to meet in America again physically, so we're now seeing people again, and they'll just say, "Man, that time that you met with me, or just talked with me, or we spent a little time, that really made a difference. Do you have any time?" And they wanted that continued friendship. I find this is what being a mining for gold leader's life. It's being willing to be a resource. So I'm going to end there. What's been most helpful about today? And we'll wrap up and pray. What about, maybe some of this is all really, I always feel kind of funny that this doesn't feel new, but is it any less important? You've heard, we talked about this, but what about today's helpful? Carl, what about today's helpful?
Tom, I've got two thoughts. The one is, just as you were talking now, I'm thinking about the Dead Sea. God wants us to be a blessing to others as well. So, like many times the flip side of the abiding is we take in so many sermons and so many teachings and so many things, but there's no outflow. So there needs to be a balance. There needs to be a balance of that. And I think the more we give to others and the more we're serving, obviously with healthy boundaries now, the more our desire will grow, or our need to be with the Lord. Like if you're hungry, you're gonna want to eat. But if you're constantly full, you're not gonna want to eat. So I'm thinking that. And then another thought is, you mentioned something earlier. We used the analogy of the body, soul, and spirit. When we're explaining things to people in Victory Weekend as well. But like with the soul being the mind and the will and the emotions, I just had some thoughts on how to use that when it comes to abiding. Well, with your mind, are you becoming like Christ? With your will, are you submitting to Him? And with your emotions, are you in conversation with Him? Does He know how you feel?
Good.
Do you speak to Him? And just asking, because sometimes they'll be like, well, my mind is being renewed. Yes, but are you submitting your will to His? Are you, different areas of your soul, the whole of your soul?
Yeah.
The thought that I had.
So good. And I think until these questions come up, we can neglect and have a dry soul and not even realize what's wrong. I mean, literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
and so those are beautiful, beautiful questions. Beth, what's helped you today?
I'm just reflecting that I think without the, where are you with the Lord? Those questions, I think this whole coach process would be so much more hollow,
Yeah, right.
much weaker, because only talking about the greats, only talking about how great is this, let's set some goals, blah blah blah. I think it's actually I think, and I know that's the model, but I just think that's really is like striking. That without this, I think it would be quite hollow and weak and like superficial maybe. But it grounds it so much.
So true. So, my final thoughts are to encourage each of you to build rhythms that you assess how you're doing. The best is probably weekly, but some do it every month, some do it every quarter, every 6 months, and just build in times where you just assess for a day or half a day, and you put it on your calendar and you don't let anything take it, and you just sit with Jesus and go, how are we doing? How's life? I would say that. And the next thing would be, when you're working with leaders, to never have being and doing, the two wings, always in your brain, just always in your brain. They're both important. One's not more important than the other. Maybe one comes first, abiding, but just sitting around with Jesus forever is not full thriving, because you have gifts, you have things that he wants to use. He wants you to bear fruit. He does want you to bear fruit, but one may come first. But never stop working, and never stop allowing God to deepen your both wings on your life, but when you're working with others, to really always keep that in the forefront. So let me pray and we'll end. So Jesus, I pray for Beth and Carl and for Yapi, who's going to watch this video. It's been a beautiful time just for the four of us to explore all these concepts. And I ask for a revival of their souls, a revival of the Holy Spirit in their inner being, that there would be such a fullness. Ephesians 3 said they would know the height, the width, the breadth, the depth of the love of God, which passes knowledge, that they might be filled to all the fullness of God. I pray for the fullness of God in their relationships, in their personal abiding in you, and then it would go out broadly to many. And I just thank you for it. In your name, amen.
Amen.
Love you guys.
Thank you, Tom. Bye-bye, babe.
We'll do 2 more, and then we'll be finished. But Mary will get a one final session with me, okay?
Yeah, great.
All right, bye. Bless.
Bye-bye.